Hi there. Now this video will be about cell shading, and what you see here is something that I will go through with you. But before we go to this stage, we have to start from the basics. So I will quickly go through the basics of cell shading with you. So let's get started. Okay, so what you see here is a very simple cubes, rectangles, whatever. And the way it works is that we have a light source, and in cell shading we usually use only one shadow color or two. Usually we don't use like 3 or 4 shadow colors, so usually they're like key light, then we have secondary shadow or nigo kage. Okay, so let's start with the light source. Now when the light is hitting a surface, this is a surface, it will have some kind of color, something. Now the next surface is this, and it gets light a bit less, and the least light gets this surface here. Same thing here, the most, a bit less, and the least. So that is kind of like how we create the cell shading. We think what surface area gets the most light, which surface area gets a bit less, and which doesn't have that much at all. So now we kind of have a base color, base, we have key light, and we have secondary shadow, nigo kage. That was the basics. Now let's start drawing some cell shading, okay? Now what you can see here is that we have a very simple form or a shape. So this is a shape, and that is a form. Now the way the form was created was that we created a framework, and then we cell shaded the object or shape or form. So let's do that on the right side. So the very first thing is I have to define what kind of form does this shape have, and that is what I do next. Now this could be the form for the shape, but I will make it a bit different still. Something like this. It's not so, like, it doesn't have to be so perfect. Okay, so now we have defined a form for the shape, and we can further define the form like this. Now this could be one kind of form, or then we can draw something like this, because I'm not yet sure what kind of form do I create for this shape, but I think this looks pretty dope already. I think that looks pretty good. Let's go with this. Okay, so now we have a form for the shape, and then starts the cell shading process. Now you have few options. You can use transformer lines, or you can do the cell shading right away. So let's do the cell shading right away, so we don't have to use the transformer lines, but it's a option which I will also show you. But let's go with the whole key light thing. So the way I would approach, it's pretty easy. So you first define where the light is coming from, and as I'm lazy, I would like it to come from this direction, roughly from there, hitting the surface from above. Okay, so let's draw some kind of shading. So this would kind of like be the easiest way to do that. So all we need to do like that, and then we do the nigo kage, which is the secondary shadow. Let's do it on multiply, and then just there. That is basically cell shading. You now kind of have everything you need. So if we take away the frame, you can see that we have a cell shading effect there. Now to make the lighting, it's pretty simple, though I haven't defined a color for the shape, so it's a bit weird to do a lighting or highlight for the shape, but let's do that still. So it would go like that, something like this. So this would be the highlight. Probably wouldn't even work like that, so it would be here, because this form is suggesting that it has some kind of like slope here, so it wouldn't get that much light. Instead, these areas would get. Even these areas are a bit questionable. Should they go like that? Probably not. Let's be more defined so you get more out of this video. So that was the fast way to do the kind of like the shadows. Now let's do it with the transform lines, a bit more defined process. So let's start with that. I will make the frame a bit more not so visible, so it's doesn't like it suggests what we should do, so we kind of like know what is the form for the shape. Now we have to think what kind of shading do we make for the whole thing. Okay, so let's get started. So now as I know what kind of form this whole thing is, I will have to think that and draw the transformer line for the shape. I think that's pretty good. I will also do this kind of stuff because I think there should be some kind of shadow there. So I will do that too. Then I will also do the secondary shadow, and I will place it here. Something like that. Because we have to remember, I know the form of the shape. I have to take that into account, okay? Then I will do, let's do a small shadow here. Something like that, I don't know. That looks pretty good, okay? Then we have to make sure we have highlights. So let's do that. As we know the shape, we kind of like have an idea that these are the closest to the light source. Remember in the very basic cube example or rectangles example, the closest to the light source should have the highlights. Now as we have these, we can do like add the base color. So let's do that. And there we go. Now we have the base color. Then what we should do is start the cell shading process again, but with the transform lines this time. So I will use those to aid me in the process. First, I will do this kind of key light. I will do it on multiply, reduce the opacity a bit. This is like a super quick one, just to let you know, it's not like super precise. We have that kind of example later on this video. There we have the secondary shadow. Then we can do, well, actually I needed to do those. Sorry, so let's go and do those. Key light there, secondary shadow there, highlights. So let's put those in. So we have all of these layers for each of these. Let's put that to screen, then lower the opacity again. This is like a super quick one, so if things don't look so good, this is a quick example of how these things work. Then we can do something super nice and actually color the transformer lines, which is one way to kind of like do this stuff. Like this. This is actually looking already quite good. And yeah, there we have it. Even though these are like super basic, super simple, you can see how the cell shading kind of like came to be. Like it is that simple. So if I, take these away and even the frame, that is how it works. Even though, yeah, I know kind of like this example, it isn't looking that good. Anyway, it still kind of like gives you the idea how it works. This is a simple example. So that is how I approach cell shading. Let's get to the more advanced stuff, and this would be that. So here we have a very similar thing. Let's get the shading off. So you can see that this is the line art and there's nothing else. It doesn't even look that good. You could say like, well, yeah, it's a bit rough. Yeah, it is. So it doesn't look that good, but it does have the essentials. Now, what I do, and this will be a bit more advanced, a bit more complex. So we kind of like went through the basics, then a simple example. This is advanced example, so this will be a bit more complex one, but try to keep up. So we get the frame here too. So what you can see here is something like, it might look like super messy. In a sense, it is. This is just a one version of what the frames or frame form could be. So let me explain. So what we have here is kind of like I framed, or I made a framework for each element to the best of my knowledge of how they should go or could go. So we have the eyebrows, and they could have this kind of form. Then we have the eyelids, not the lashes, eyelids, and they could have this kind of form. Then we have the eyeball, it could have this kind of form. So what I've done here is I've made a 3D framework inside my head to the different elements in the drawing, in the face, to map out how the cell shading would or could work in the face, or on the face, for the face, whatever. We have the ears. You know, all of these have been mapped out how they could go, how they could work. It's questionable, would this go more like this rather than, you know, like this. So it's you know, it's questionable. I did it this way this time, but yeah, you kind of get the point. We have the nasal bridge here, and then we have the brow ridge here. All of these have been mapped out as a framework inside my head. I wouldn't draw this normally. This is how I would think when I start to cell shade the face. So this is the end result that you can see, and you can probably see that it's pretty messy, and I know, but that's kind of like how it would work inside my brain. So that's, or in my mind, or whatever. And now you can see that the shadows are somewhat following the framework that we had defined for the face. So we have these, you know, lines here, as these are following, you know, what the kind of like the three-dimensional view for the face would be with the cell shading. Because in cell shading we have to make it simplified. We have to simplify the shapes into simple forms. Hopefully all of this makes sense, because I'm not sure if it's easy to follow anymore, but hopefully it is. So what we have, line art, then we have the shading, and you can see that we have the kind of like the transformer lines here suggesting how the light is, you know, working. And in this scenario we have the light coming from kind of like from the back, and then all of the shadows are in the middle. Then as the last example, we have kind of like a finalized illustration. This was a very quick, super quick drawing, but you can see that when you have placed all of these, you know, shadows, everything in place, all you need to do is change the colors underneath, change the shading colors, and that's it. Like, everything is here ready for you, and yeah, it's kind of like done. So this is the final illustration. Hopefully you like the small, very quick cell shading tutorial and learned a few new things on how to do cell shading. In a sense, it is super simple, but when you have complex objects, elements, things, items in your drawing, then it becomes a bit more, well, not so easy anymore. But yeah, you just have to create a form for the shape in your head when you are doing the cell shading. And the transformer lines, which were these, this is transformer line, this is transformer line, that is transformer line, this, that, this, that. These are transformer lines, and they help you define the shadows for the drawing. So you follow those and you will get a nice cell shading for your drawings. So yeah, hopefully you liked the video, and if anything, I will see you in the next one.